Mom, did you actually read what I sent you? I read it. And? Page 7, Section 4. Prevent drafts at all times. Caitlin, the window is open 3 inches. That's not a draft, that's ventilation, which is on page 12 of your own document. Maintain adequate air circulation. That's different. How exactly is it different? It's different because the context is different. You don't understand modern child safety standards. Caitlin, I spent 22 years teaching people not to die in environments that actively wanted to kill them. That is not the same thing. Those were adults. This is a baby, my baby, and you come in here with your military attitude thinking you know everything, but you're 63 years old and the world has changed and your methods are dangerous superstitions, Mom. Do you understand that? Dangerous superstitions. Brandon sat at the kitchen table and studied the tablecloth pattern with enormous dedication. Brandon, do you agree with that? Brandon looked up, looked at Caitlin, looked at me. I think you both have really valid points. My name is Dorothy Hayes, 63 years old, 22 years as a survival instructor at Fort Bragg. After that, safety consultant for critical infrastructure, 3 nuclear facilities, 2 chemical plants, 1 offshore platform that subsequently did not explode. Retired 14 months ago. My daughter Caitlin just called my professional experience dangerous superstitions. In front of her husband, in her kitchen, while holding a 30-page document she printed from a website that also sells the gadgets she's using to monitor her 8-month-old son. I looked at the 30 pages in my hands. I looked at Caitlin. I looked at the window. 3 inches open, cross ventilation from the south. Optimal, actually. You're right. Safety is serious, and you're right that I've been careless. But Caitlin, this document is incomplete. What do you mean incomplete? No evacuation plan, no smoke protocol, no room-by-room risk assessment. Mom, it's a baby monitor manual, not, if we're protecting Oliver, we protect him professionally. Give me a week. Caitlin opened her mouth, closed it. What are you going to do? Finish the document. She stared at me for a long moment. Brandon very quietly poured himself more coffee. Marjorie Wells lives 4 houses down and has been my closest friend for 11 years. She was a school principal for 31 years, which means she has seen every variety of human nonsense and maintains the composure of a person who once confiscated a live ferret from a 7th grader without raising her voice. I sat at her kitchen table that evening with the 30 pages and a glass of wine. Read me the best part. Section 8, page 14. Caregivers must maintain hand temperature between 68 and 82 degrees Fahrenheit. A non-contact thermometer is recommended. Marjorie looked at me over her reading glasses. She bought one? Industrial, laser-guided. She aimed it at you? Measured my hands, 29.2. I had to run them under cold water. Marjorie took a sip of wine, set down the glass with deliberate care. Dorothy, this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. I need to focus. You're going to rewrite it, aren't you? I'm going to complete it. There's no protocol for electrical failure, nothing for smoke at ground level. The fire exit path goes through the kitchen, which is statistically the highest risk room in any domestic structure. This document was written by someone who has never assessed an actual threat environment. She's going to lose her mind. She's going to learn something. Marjorie refilled my glass without being asked. That's why we're friends. My Sandra hired a cleaning service last month, threw out all my garden tools, said they were cluttering the garage. 30-year-old pruning shears, my mother's trowel. Did you say anything? I said thank you, and then I replanted her entire front garden with plants that require professional maintenance. She doesn't know yet. I looked at her. That's good. We do what we can. She nodded at the 30 pages. What's your actual plan? I picked up a pen. Finish the document. I want to be precise about something because Caitlin was not wrong about everything. She loves Oliver with the specific ferocity of a person who has imagined every possible way to lose him. That's not irrational. That's what love looks like when it's paying attention. The problem isn't that she's afraid. The problem is that she's outsourced her fear management to a website that charges $49.99 for a breathing monitor with a 3.2 rating on Amazon. I know because I checked. I checked all of it. Every piece of equipment listed in her 30 pages, cross-referenced manufacturer specs with independent safety lab data, made notes, put the notes in an appendix. The completed document came to 47 pages, plus 3 appendices, plus a separate section for the cat. Sandy is 8 years old, 12 pounds, and profoundly indifferent to human anxiety. He gets his own section because he is a biological entity with unpredictable trajectory patterns, and Caitlin's original document contained only one sentence about him. Keep pet isolated from infant at all times, which is both impractical and, as I would later discover, unnecessary. But that comes later. I called Caitlin on a Tuesday morning. The document is ready. A pause. How long is it? 47 pages. Longer pause. Mom, I gave you 30. Yours had gaps. I filled them. There's an evacuation diagram for each floor, color-coded threat assessment by room, a protocol for smoke at floor level specifically, because that's how infants are affected. They're lower to the ground than adults, and standard fire response assumes adult height. Most baby safety documents miss this. Silence on the line. There's also a section on your monitoring equipment, Appendix C. I'd recommend reading that first. Why first? Read it and call me back. She called back in 20 minutes. 3.2. 3.2. The breathing monitor cost $80. I know. The temperature sensor is from a brand that doesn't have a U.S. office. Also in Appendix C, yes. A very long silence. Thank you for telling me. I'm coming Friday. I'll bring the document. Friday, Caitlin's house. I arrived at 9 a.m. with a printed copy of the 47 pages, a separate laminated evacuation diagram for the nursery wall, and Sandy's section in a protective sleeve because the cat had already demonstrated he would sit on anything left on a flat surface. Brandon opened the door. He looked at the laminated diagram. Oh no. Good morning, Brandon. She's prepared herself, mentally, I think. Good. Caitlin was in the kitchen. She had clearly been awake for some time. There was coffee and the particular brightness in her eyes that means she has organized her thoughts into a presentation. Mom, I want to say something before we start. Go ahead. I hear what you're saying about the equipment. I've already ordered replacements. The ones you listed in Appendix C, I cross-checked and they're all certified. She paused. But I need you to understand that the framework I built was based on real research, and just because some of the products were lower quality doesn't mean the whole system is wrong. I set the 47 pages on the table. I know. Your framework is mostly sound. The ventilation section is actually good. You understood airflow better than most people I've briefed. Caitlin blinked. You're not going to argue? I'm going to add to it. There's a difference. She looked at the 47 pages, at the laminated diagram, at me. What's in Sandy's section? Behavioral risk assessment, historical interaction data, 3 observed instances of self-initiated proximity to Oliver that resulted in cessation of infant distress. Caitlin stared. Sandy calmed Oliver down? Twice last month, when you were at work and Brandon called me to come over. Once the week before. I documented it. I paused. Your isolation protocol is based on allergy risk, which is legitimate. But Sandy has been tested. No allergen markers. I pulled his vet records. You pulled the cat's vet records? For the appendix, yes. Brandon made a sound from the other side of the kitchen. When I looked over, he was facing the window with his shoulders doing something that suggested he was either laughing or experiencing a medical event. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. The first week of the combined protocol was, by objective measure, extraordinary. Monday. I arrived at 8 to relieve Caitlin for her work call. Before she left, she handed me the laser thermometer. Page 4, Section 2. I aimed it at my hands. 79.6. Acceptable range. I know it's a little excessive. It's a good idea, actually. I would have used a rectal thermometer in field conditions, but this is more practical. The door closed. I stood in the front hallway for a moment. Then I took out my own notebook and made a note. Caitlin, reconsider pediatric field medicine module. Possible common ground. Monday afternoon, Oliver went down for his nap. I sent the first report. Caitlin's phone, 12:47 p.m. Report number 1. Time, 12:47. Subject, Oliver. Status, stable. Activity, sleep. Phase estimated deep. Respiration, even. Asset, Sandy. Position, window zill. Perimeter, clear. Behavior, surveillance. Brandon Morris. Departed residential zone, 12:31. Direction, unknown. Estimated return, 1400. Note, discovered chips behind sofa cushion. Source, unconfirmed. Recommend investigation. Commander Hayes. Her response came back in 4 minutes. Mom, why is Brandon listed as an asset? All household entities are documented. Protocol consistency. He's my husband. Acknowledged. He is listed under Allied Personnel. Category, neutral. A longer pause. Please stop calling yourself Commander. Operational title, non-negotiable. Brandon came home at 2:15. He walked in, saw the report on the counter where Caitlin had left it, read the part about himself, and stood very still for a moment. Category, neutral. You maintained your designation. Congratulations. He looked at me. Something in his expression shifted. The careful neutrality he usually maintained around conversations about the protocol dropped for just a second. Is there a way to upgrade the designation? Depends on performance. He nodded, went to put his bag down. On his way through the kitchen, he accidentally left a new pack of batteries on the counter next to the baby monitor. The old ones had been running low. I'd mentioned it in report number 3 the previous week, which Caitlin had not acted on. I made a note. B. Morris. Reclassify. Category, covert allied. Provisional. Tuesday, the decontamination protocol. Caitlin's document, page 29. All caregivers should minimize introduction of external contaminants. Hand washing required before handling infant. Reasonable. Incomplete. I arrived Tuesday morning with an industrial sprayer. 70% isopropyl. Food grade. Tested. Caitlin opened the door, looked at the sprayer. What is that? External contaminant mitigation, page 29. You brought the city in on your clothes. Particulate matter, traffic exhaust, whatever was on the subway handrail. I drove. Gas station. You stopped at the BP on Hendricks. I saw the receipt on the counter yesterday. Fuel vapor is a respiratory irritant. Mom. Arms out. I'm not. You wrote, minimize external contaminants. I'm minimizing. Arms out. A very long pause. Then Caitlin slowly raised her arms. I sprayed her efficiently. 3 passes, 45 seconds, standard decon sweep. She stood with her eyes closed and the expression of a woman renegotiating her understanding of the universe. Brandon appeared in the hallway behind her, saw what was happening, and immediately turned around. Oh my God! Brandon, you're next. I was inside. I haven't been anywhere. You went to the garage. Silence. How do you know that? Grease on your left elbow. Industrial lubricant. There's a can of WD-40 on the shelf out there. I turned to him. Arms out. He came forward with the resigned dignity of a man who has evaluated his options. Caitlin, still standing with her arms out, opened one eye. Welcome to my life. How long has this been going on? 3 days. Damn. Wednesday. Lights out at 1900. This was in my document, page 33. Establish fixed schedule sleep protocol to regulate infant circadian rhythm. All non-essential activity in residential zone to be suspended at 1900 hours. Communication via designated channel only. I had purchased 2-way radios, basic model, good range for a residential structure. At 6:58, I handed one to Caitlin and one to Brandon. You bought walkie-talkies. Communication devices for after lights out. We have phones, Mom. Phones create light and notification sounds. Radios are push to talk, lower disruption profile. I clicked mine on. Call signs. I'm command. You're Mama 1. Brandon is neutral. I told you to stop. Static crackle. My radio. Mama 1, this is command. Oliver is entering pre-sleep phase. Reduce ambient noise. Over. Caitlin stared at the radio in her hand. Brandon very carefully pressed his push-to-talk button. This is neutral. Copy that. Reducing ambient noise. Also requesting reclassification. Over. I looked at him. He looked at me. Something passed between us that was not quite a smile on either side, but was adjacent to one. Request noted. Under review. Command out. At 7:15, Caitlin's radio crackled. Mama 1, this is command. Oliver is stable. Sandy is on the windowsill. Threat level, green. You can pour yourself a glass of wine. Over. A pause. Copy that. Thank you. Over. Out. Thursday. Caitlin's friends came over. This was not in any protocol. Caitlin mentioned it Wednesday evening. 6 women from her new moms group, all with infants around Oliver's age. A regular gathering. Coffee, shared anxiety, mutual validation. I arrived at 8. The gathering was at 10. At 9:45, I set up in the front hallway with a clipboard. The first to arrive was a woman named Tiffany. Sharp eyes, sensible shoes, the look of someone who has read everything and trusts nothing. She glanced at the clipboard. Is there a sign-in sheet? Safety briefing, 12 minutes. Please take a seat in the living room. Oh, okay. By 10:05, all 6 women were seated. I stood at the front of the living room with a printed diagram of the first floor. Good morning. I'm Dorothy Hayes, Oliver's grandmother. Before we begin, I want to walk you through the emergency egress plan for this floor, the location of the fire extinguisher, and the smoke response protocol for environments with infants present, which differs from standard adult protocol in two significant ways. Silence. This will take approximately 12 minutes. If you have questions, hold them until the end. I indicated the diagram. Primary exit, front door, 15 feet. Secondary exit, kitchen door to rear garden, 22 feet, but requires navigating the kitchen, which is statistically the highest risk room in a domestic structure. In case of smoke at floor level, Caitlin from the kitchen doorway. Mom. In case of smoke at floor level, standard standing height visibility assumptions do not apply to infants. You drop to your knees. You move the baby below your center of gravity. I found that most parenting safety resources miss this because they're written by people who have never evacuated a building. Tiffany was writing something in her phone. A woman named Lauren raised her hand. Is there a handout? I produced 12 copies of the one-page summary from Appendix B. At 10:22, the briefing ended. The women distributed to the kitchen and living room. Caitlin pulled me aside. Mom, that was... Tiffany asked good questions. Yes, but... She also pointed out that your kitchen fire extinguisher expired in February. I've already ordered a replacement. It arrives Saturday. Caitlin closed her eyes. You're right about the extinguisher. I know. That doesn't mean the briefing wasn't... Lauren took a photo of the evacuation diagram. She said she was going to make one for her own house. Caitlin opened her eyes, looked toward the kitchen where Tiffany was showing something on her phone to two of the others, explaining, animated. She didn't say anything else. That night was when Brandon and I had the conversation. Caitlin went to bed at 10. Brandon was still in the kitchen when I came down for water. He had a glass of whiskey. He looked at me, got a second glass, poured 2 fingers, set it in front of me. I raised an eyebrow. You don't drink, right? I don't drink whiskey. I picked up the glass. But sometimes the situation. He sat, turned his glass, didn't say anything for a moment. She wasn't always like this, before Oliver. I know, she's my daughter. 2 years ago, she had a panic attack at work. Big meeting, 40 people. She was presenting quarterly numbers and she said the room started spinning and she couldn't remember what she was saying, and then she was sitting on the floor and someone was handing her water. He paused. After that, she started controlling things. Everything she could control. Lists, apps, research. I didn't say anything. The document isn't about Oliver, is it? No, I don't think it is. She needs to talk to someone, a professional. I've said that. She says she doesn't have time. Oliver, work, the house. She'll find time. I set down the glass. I'll make sure of it. He looked at me. How? I'll write a protocol. A pause. Then Brandon did something I had not previously observed him do. He laughed. Genuinely. Not the careful managed laugh he used to avoid conflict, but an actual one, short and real. And then he pressed his hand over his mouth because of Oliver sleeping upstairs. God, okay, yeah. I finished the whiskey, stood. Brandon, you've been leaving things on the counter. The batteries, the new fire extinguisher manual last week, the updated monitor specs. He went very still. I don't know what you're talking about. Understood. I moved toward the door. You've been reclassified. Appendix D, effective tonight. Category, Covert Allied, Provisional Pending Performance Review. I didn't look back, but I heard him exhale. Friday of the second week, Sandy. I want to be clear that what happened was not in any protocol. mine or Caitlin's. It was not planned. I did not encourage it. Sandy makes his own decisions and has done so for 8 years. Oliver had been crying for 40 minutes, not the escalating distress cry, the sustained, low-grade, nothing is actually wrong, but I am displeased cry that pediatric literature describes as normal and parents experience as psychological warfare. I had tried everything on page 9 through 14 of the combined protocol. Nothing catastrophic. He was fed, dry, comfortable, room temperature optimal. He simply did not want to sleep. I was in the rocking chair, Oliver on my shoulder. Sandy was on the windowsill doing surveillance, which is his primary occupation. At some point, Sandy got down from the windowsill, walked across the room, jumped onto the padded bench at the end of the crib, and from there, into the crib itself, which was technically a violation of the isolation protocol. He curled into the far corner, looked at Oliver. Oliver looked at Sandy. Oliver stopped crying. Not immediately. There was a wind down, a few residual hiccups, then quiet. Sandy arranged himself more firmly in the corner. Oliver's eyes went heavy. I sat in the rocking chair for approximately 90 seconds. Then I got out my notebook. Sandy, Appendix E, Behavioral Note, Voluntary Proximity to Oliver, Self-Initiated. Duration, 22 minutes. Outcome, Cessation of infant distress, transition to sleep. Mechanism unknown. Recommend further observation. Do not disturb. Below that, I wrote, Revise isolation protocol. Condition-specific exception pending data review. When Caitlin came home that afternoon, I showed her the note. She read it again. He just got in there. Unprompted, yes. And Oliver stopped crying. Within approximately 90 seconds. I have the timestamps. She looked through the nursery door at Sandy, who was back on the windowsill and had resumed surveillance. He's never done that before. He may have been waiting for the right protocol conditions. Mom, the cat does not understand protocol conditions. Appendix E is preliminary. I'll need more data points. The fire happened on a Tuesday. Not a catastrophic fire. Not a fire at all, technically. A short circuit in the nursery wall outlet, the one behind the changing table that I had flagged in page 31 as a high-priority inspection item because the outlet cover was cracked and the wiring in this section of the house was original to the renovation from 11 years ago. Caitlin had emailed the building notes to her handyman. He hadn't come yet. It was 7:15 in the evening. Brandon was working late. Caitlin was in the living room with Tiffany and Lauren, who had come by informally. I had Oliver in the nursery for his pre-sleep routine. I smelled it before I saw it, the specific smell of electrical insulation heating, distinct from dust burning on a light bulb, distinct from anything else. 14 months at a chemical facility teaches you that particular smell. I put Oliver down on the floor in the center of the room, not the crib, the floor, because it's the lowest risk position when the threat source is wall level and unknown. Check the outlet. Heat visible at the cover edge. Small discoloration. Not flames yet, but the precursor stage. And the precursor stage was the moment to act, not the stage after. I picked up Oliver. I went to the door and said calmly, Caitlin, I need you to call the electrician. The nursery outlet is presenting a pre-ignition condition. Please also bring the fire extinguisher from the kitchen. Take the route through the hallway, not through the kitchen. Tiffany later told me it was the calmness that made her move before she understood why. Something in the tone, not urgent, not panicked, just the specific register of a person who knows exactly what is happening and what needs to happen next. Caitlin came through the hallway door in 11 seconds. She had the extinguisher. What? Oh my God, is Oliver? Oliver is fine. He's here. I had him on my hip. The outlet, right side of the changing table. Don't touch it. I turned to Tiffany, who had followed. Can you locate the breaker panel? It's in the hallway closet, second shelf. I need the nursery circuit off. Tiffany went. She found it. 20 seconds later, the lights went out and the heat at the outlet began to dissipate. Caitlin stood in the dark nursery, holding the extinguisher and staring at the outlet. I handed her Oliver. Then I went to the changing table and picked up the breathing monitor that was sitting there. The one she'd replaced 2 weeks ago with the certified version I'd recommended in Appendix C. It was silent. I checked the back. The battery indicator was on red, almost dead. It had been slowly draining, and the low battery alert, which was supposed to sound at 20%, had not triggered, which was either a software fault or a firmware issue. And I had a note in Appendix C about this specific possibility, a known issue with this model reported in 4 separate user reviews. I set the monitor down. I did not say anything. Caitlin looked at it, then at me. It didn't go off. No. You flagged that outlet. Page 31. Recommendation number 7. Yes. She sat down on the floor, still holding Oliver. He was calm. He'd been calm the whole time, which was either good temperament or the specific confusion of an infant who doesn't yet have a framework for danger. Tiffany and Lauren appeared in the doorway. Tiffany had her phone out, electrician already called. Lauren looked at me, at Oliver, at Caitlin on the floor, at the outlet. What happened? Precautionary response, electrical fault, pre-ignition stage. I looked at the monitor on the changing table. The monitor didn't detect anything because it doesn't detect electrical faults. It was also low on battery. I paused. It's in the appendix. Caitlin laughed. It was a strange sound, part relief, part something that wasn't quite the opposite of crying. It's in the appendix. Marjorie appeared in the front door 40 seconds later. No one had called her. She had apparently been walking Sandy. Not her Sandy, our Sandy, who sometimes visited her on his own initiative, and she had been returning him. And she had seen Tiffany through the window on the phone looking serious. She stood in the nursery doorway, took in the scene, the dark room, the extinguisher, Caitlin on the floor, me with the monitor. What did I miss? Electrical fault, pre-ignition, resolved. Are you all right? I think so. Good. Marjorie looked at the outlet, at me. You flagged it. Page 31. Your mother flagged it. I know, Marjorie. Just making sure that landed. Caitlin looked up at me. Oliver had his fist in his mouth and was making small sounds of interest at the ceiling. Thank you. I sat down on the floor next to her. Caitlin looked at me. I think she expected something. Some version of, I told you so, or the more tactical version, which is silence that functions as I told you so. I didn't say either. What I said was, how long has the panic been happening? She went still. Brandon told me about the meeting 2 years ago. He shouldn't have. He was right to. I looked at Oliver. The document isn't about him, is it? A long silence, the kind that means someone is deciding whether to have the real conversation or the easier one. I keep thinking I'm going to miss something. Something that I should have checked and I didn't, and then that's not going to stop with more pages, Caitlin. I know. You need to talk to someone, a professional. I don't have time. I'll come 3 mornings a week. You'll have time. She looked at me. I looked back. You'd do that? I'm already here 3 mornings a week. I'll shift the schedule. It's in the protocol. You're going to add therapy to the protocol? Caregiver Wellness, page 48. I'll draft it tonight. Something in her face changed. Not completely. Not the full shift that takes months or years. Just the beginning of one. Marjorie from the doorway. "I have wine in my bag. Anyone want wine?" "Yes." 3 weeks later, Saturday morning, Caitlin had 6 women from her mom's group in the living room. This was different from the previous gathering. This one she had organized specifically. She'd called it a safety and wellness session. I had been consulted on the agenda. I had not expected the agenda item she added at the end. The morning went well. Evacuation plans, equipment certification, the smoke protocol that Tiffany had now implemented at her own house and reported back favorably on. Lauren had questions about outlet covers that turned into a 20-minute sidebar on electrical safety that I considered one of the better conversations I'd had in months. Then Caitlin stood up. "I want to say something before we wrap up." She paused, organizing herself the way she does. 3 weeks ago, we had a situation in Oliver's nursery. Electrical fault. My mother handled it before it became anything serious. The room was quiet. The breathing monitor I had for Oliver, good brand, certified, one of the ones on my list, didn't go off, low battery. I hadn't checked it in 4 days because I was relying on the low battery alert, and the low battery alert had a known firmware issue. She looked at her hands. My mother had flagged the outlet in her protocol document. She had also flagged the monitor firmware issue. I had read both. I had meant to follow up. A woman named Rachel, who I'd met twice now, and whose questions during briefings were unusually good. What happened? My mother put Oliver on the floor, which I wouldn't have known to do. She assessed the outlet, told Tiffany where the breaker panel was before anyone panicked, and had the situation resolved before I made it from the living room. Caitlin paused. I gave her a 30-page document at the beginning of all this and told her that her experience was dangerous superstitions. The room was very quiet. I was wrong about that. I was right about some things, the framework, the approach, but I was wrong about that specific part. She looked across the room at me, where I was standing near the window. I don't say that easily, but it needed to be said, publicly. I looked at her. She looked back. Tiffany said, into the silence, "For what it's worth, I redid my whole house after the first briefing. Found 2 outlets that needed replacing." Rachel, "Can we get a copy of the combined protocol? It's 47 pages. Rachel considered this. That seems right, actually. A few things about how it ended, and I say ended loosely because it didn't end so much as settle into a different shape. Caitlin started seeing a therapist, Thursday afternoons. I come at noon and stay until 6. She hasn't missed a session. The combined protocol is now 51 pages. Caitlin added a section on sleep regression that I thought was well-researched. I added a note at the bottom of her section. Methodology sound, sources verified. Good work. She hasn't mentioned it, but I noticed she kept the copy with the note rather than the clean one. Brandon was formally promoted to category Allied Personnel Primary. I told him in the kitchen one morning while Caitlin was upstairs. He said thank you in a tone that suggested the category mattered more than it probably should have to a 36-year-old man. I made a note that he is more motivated by formal recognition than he appears to be. This is useful information. Sandy has his own page now, Appendix E. His behavioral data has 3 new entries, the most recent one 2 weeks ago. Self-initiated proximity. Duration, 31 minutes. Outcome, full sleep transition, no intervention required from human personnel. I have left open the question of mechanism. Some things don't need explaining. Marjorie comes over on Tuesday evenings, usually brings wine, usually leaves with the remainder of whatever I've made for dinner. Last week, she told me that her daughter Sandra had asked why the front garden required a professional to maintain. Marjorie told her it was a heritage planting scheme. Sandra apparently nodded and said nothing. I asked Marjorie if she felt bad about it. She thought about this for a moment. Not even a little. The last thing. A month after the outlet incident, Caitlin and I were at the kitchen table, the 51 pages between us. She was adding to the sleep regression section. I was updating the equipment registry in Appendix C. 2 new items she'd bought, both certified, both good choices, actually. She looked up. Mom, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Did you think, when I gave you the 30 pages and said what I said, did you think about just not engaging with it, not doing the 47 pages, not doing any of it, just saying okay and doing what you wanted anyway when I wasn't watching? I considered this honestly. Yes. Why didn't you? Because you weren't wrong about wanting the protocol. You were wrong about who was qualified to write it. I turned a page in the appendix, and because you're my daughter, and you were afraid, and afraid people don't need to be told they're wrong. They need a better system. Caitlin looked at the 51 pages. It's a pretty good system now. It's a functional system. There's room for improvement. I turned another page. Page 27 still has the ventilation contradiction. I know about page 27, Mom. Just noting it. I know. Brandon appeared in the doorway, saw both of us bent over the document, and turned around without a word. From the kitchen, we heard him say, very quietly, to no one, "Damn." Sandy walked in, sat in the middle of the table between the 2 stacks of paper, and looked at us both with the specific expression of a 12-pound cat who has been classified as Appendix E and finds this entirely appropriate. I made a note. Sandy, behavior consistent. Recommend permanent protocol inclusion. Classification, essential personnel. Oliver slept upstairs. The monitor was charged. The outlet was fixed. The fire extinguisher was new. The document was 51 pages and growing. That seemed about right.